We continue in our study in the gospel written by Matthew the Apostle. We find ourselves in this selection at Matthew chapter 5 and verses 13 through 16. I will be reading this portion of scripture from the modern translation called The Message. Let me tell you why you are here. You're here to be salt seasoning that brings out the God flavors of the earth. If you lose your saltiness, how will people taste godliness? You've lost your usefulness and will end up in the garbage. Here's another way to put it. You're here to be light, bringing out the God colors in the world. God is not a secret to be kept. We're going public with this, as public as a city on a hill. If I make you light bearers, you don't think I'm going to hide you under a bucket, do you? I'm putting you on a light stand. Now that I put you there on a hilltop, on a light stand, shine. Keep open house. Be generous with your lives. By opening up to others, you'll prompt people to open up with God, this generous Father in heaven. In these verses, Jesus calls all of his disciples to be witnesses for him. If you have the opportunity to share your faith with people outside the faith, you'll find that one of the objections to the faith will be the lifestyle of some people in the church. It may be the extravagant lifestyle of some television evangelists. It may be the person at work who claims to be a Christian and is obnoxious to work with. It may be the father who was a pillar of faith and decency in the church and at home was abusive with his wife and family. The reality is not whether people in the church are witnesses to the faith. The question is, what type of witnesses are they? I do not think that we as Christians are perfect. I realize that we all have our bad days, and we may even have a meltdown or two on the road to eternity. I think for most sincere Christians, when we publicly fail in our behavior, we have remorse for what we have done. We understand the importance of consistency in how we live out our lives as Christians. I know that many of us are vulnerable to people who will take one incident from our life and use it to judge us as deficient in the faith. We cannot do anything about that. What I would say is that even in our failings, we can still be effective witnesses. Do we project an air of pride or humility? Do we accept and confess our failings when and where appropriate to those outside the faith? In other words, even in our failings, we can witness to the reality of the faith. In our culture, we live in a world saturated with messages. We are bombarded with claims about a whole lot of products and services. Some of these have legitimate claims and some do not. My theory is that in this age, Christian witnessing must shift from a paradigm of the sharing of information about the faith and the Christian life and lifestyle to the sharing of a lifestyle. I'm not saying that the facts of faith are unimportant. I'm saying in the context of a culture where we have all sorts of claims out there, the Christian faith may be heard as just one more group making outlandish claims. Take, for example, the resurrection of Jesus. Can I prove this to someone? On the other hand, if I live a life that is at odds with the prevailing values of our culture, be it in the realm of materialism, sensuality, or individualism, that cannot be so easily argued against. You can argue against facts, but a person who consistently lives out certain things, that's a little more difficult to argue against. You see, they may not agree with it, but they are not really in a position to deny it. And that's the key. They cannot deny it. There are people who are gifted with an ability to share the faith with people. I believe that this is a legitimate gift, but it is also not what we are called to do. There is a place and time to share the faith verbally, But what does salt do? If you've ever binged on potato chips, what happens? You have ingested a whole lot of salt. The salt dries you out. You then have to have something to drink. Christians, to update what Jesus was saying, are to be the potato chips of the world. If we allow people enough contact with us, we can cultivate a thirst. The key for us is to be content to be potato chips. Let us be true to the faith in areas that God has placed.